My dear students, I welcome you all to my educational channel, the name of which is Priyanka Dotto. Here you will find video presentation on English language and literature of school level, college level and competitive examinations. Today's assignment is video presentation number 3 on the poem The Road Not Taken. The topics to be covered in today's presentation are discussion of stanza 3 and 4, word notes of stanza 3 and 4, and paraphrase of stanza 3 and 4. Now, let us look at stanza 3. The poet says, and both that morning equally lay in leaves. The poet says that both the roads were covered with leaves. Here we find a note of contradiction. The contradiction lies in what he said about the roads in the previous stanzas. In the previous stanzas, he told that the second road was grassy and it did not have as many marks of wear and tear as the first road. Now, if the second road was grassy, then the grass covering must be exposed. But here the poet says that both the roads were covered with leaves and that of the same extent. The poet carries on the idea by saying that no step had trodden black. As both the roads were covered with yellow leaves, if anyone had travelled on them, the yellow leaves would have got black marks on them. But as it was not the case, it is evident that the poet was the first person to go to that forest that very morning. In the third line, the poet says, "Oh, I kept the first for another day." The poet decided to travel on the first road on some day in future. Then the poet says, yet knowing how way leads on to way. Here the poet expresses a fact. He tells that a road takes us to another road, and that another road takes us to a different road. Thus, roads create a kind of maze from which it becomes impossible to come back to the original position. This is what the poet says in the final line of the stanza. I doubted if I should ever come back. The poet here says that he wanted to come back to the fork in the forest, but he was not certain because of the very nature of roads. Now, let us look at some of the word notes from this stanza. The first word is equally. It means in similar manner. The second word is step. Here the word step refers to footsteps. The third one is trodden black, means moved on the leaves and thus made them black. The fourth one, leads on, means takes one or rather someone. The next word note is doubted, means was not sure of something. The final word note is come back. It means return. Here the poet refers to returning to the position where the forest became divided into two roads. Now, let us look at the paraphrase of this stanza. The morning in which the poet went to the forest, both the roads looked the same from outwards. Actually, both of them remained covered with leaves, of course, yellow leaves. Moreover, as no one had travelled on the leaves which covered the roads, there was no black mark on them. It meant that no one had walked on either of them. However, the poet decided to walk on the first road on another day. Now, let us move to the next slide for the remaining part of this paraphrase. However, he was not certain as to whether he would be able to return to the original place where the two roads bifurcated. What made him utter such a comment was that roads are usually set in a maze, and very often one road leads to another road, and this road leads to another, and thus roads take one in an eternal movement forward. Yes, there is no possibility of moving backwards to the original position. Now, let us move to the last stanza of the poem. The poet says, I shall be telling this with a sigh. The verb shall be telling is in future continuous tense. It means that the poet hopes that he will tell something. So, another word from this line which is important is shy. The word shy carries both a positive meaning and a negative meaning. If the word shy conveys a positive meaning, that it means relief. And if we use the word shy to express or convey a negative meaning, then it means despair. The poet does not know what his feeling will be. Now the feeling will is associated with his traveling on the second road. Now things have become quite interesting because the act of traveling on a road gives the poet a sensation, a new kind of experience. We can easily assume that the roads of which the poet speaks are not roads simply in literal sense. The roads are symbolic. Now, we must think about the nature of the roads. The first road was used for a greater number of times than the second road. Thus, the first road symbolizes the conventional attitude to life. And from this interpretation, we can easily assume that the second road symbolizes the unconventional attitude of life, which is cultivated by only a selected number of people. Now, the poet says, somewhere ages and ages hence, the poet will convey his experience in distant future. This sense of distant future has been expressed by the phrase edges and edges. What would he say is important. Two roads diverged in a wood. He would narrate his experience of going in a forest, facing a fork, from which the forest became diverged or bifurcated into two roads. Then the poet says I, thereafter there is a dash. Then the poet again says I. So the poet makes it clear that it is he who has accomplished the action. What has he done? I took the one less traveled by. He made a journey on the second road. And that has made all the difference. If the second road symbolizes the unconventional way of life, then the experience that the poet is supposed to get from this one is bound to be different from the experience which he should have got by leading a conventional way of life. So the key point here is difference. Now let us move back to the word sigh, which occurs in the first line of this stanza. After leading a life in the unconventional pattern, the poet might be happy or sad. This duality of meanings has been conveyed by the word sigh. Thus, the poem assumes a very interesting conclusion. Now, let us look at some word notes from this stanza. The first word is sigh. It is an expression of both relief and despair. The second one, ages and ages. It means in distant future. The third one, hence, means from this point of time. The fourth one is diverged. It means became separated. You must make the correction here. The next one, made. The word made here means caused. The final one, difference, means different experience. As I have already clarified, the kind of experience the poet is supposed to get will be different from the one which people leading a conventional life gets. Now, the last thing is the paraphrase of this stanza. The poet said that in distant future he will tell that one day he went to a forest where he had to choose one of the two roads, and the selection of the road not frequented by many, which stands for the unconventional. Make a correction here. Way of life has given him a kind of experience which is different from the one he would have, another correction, he would have got if he followed the other road, which stands for the conventional way of life. Now, this is all about the discussion of this poem. Now, at the end of this presentation, I would like to tell you that subscribe my channel, share my video presentation, comment your opinion and put forward your queries. Thank you. See you again in my next video presentation, which will be on the reinforcement section from the road not taken. You know what reinforcement means strengthening. What I shall try to strengthen is your knowledge and understanding which you have got from these discussions. Thank you.